Dear students, I welcome you to this lecture. Today we will discuss the critical evaluation of communitarianism. In this lecture, we will also critically assess the works of leading communitarian thinkers we have studied, like Michael Sandel, Michael Walzer, and Charles Taylor. The objectives of this lecture are to understand the major criticisms against the communitarian philosophy, to comprehend the criticisms posed against the works of Sandel, Walzer and Taylor, and to appreciate the continuing significance of communitarianism despite all objections. Dear students, before reviewing the criticisms, let us quickly summarize communitarianism. Communitarianism is a socio-political and ethical philosophy emphasizing the importance of community, shared values, and social relationships in shaping individuals and societies. It stands in contrast to more individualistic ideologies that prioritize individual rights and autonomy. Communitarianism seeks to strike a balance between personal freedoms and the community's collective well-being. Some of the main ideas of communitarian philosophy are cultural context and common good. Communitarians recognize the significance of cultural traditions, norms, and values in shaping communities. They believe these factors contribute to the identity and well-being of individuals and should be preserved. Communitarians argue that a strong sense of community and shared values are essential for the well-being of individuals and society. They emphasize the pursuit of the common good over purely individual interests. Social interdependence. Communitarians emphasize the interconnectedness of individuals within a society. They believe people are not isolated entities but are shaped by their relationships, culture and communities. Due to this, communitarianism emphasizes the importance of civic engagement and responsibilities. It suggests that individuals should actively participate in the life of their community and contribute to its betterment. Critique of hyper-individualism. One of the main criticisms of communitarianism is directed towards the hyper-individualistic tendencies of modern societies, where personal autonomy and rights might be pursued to the disadvantage of social cohesion and common welfare. Communitarians advocate for a balance between individual rights and social responsibilities. They argue that individual rights should not come at the expense of the greater good. They advocate for policies and practices that promote social harmony, solidarity, and cooperation. Some well-known communitarian thinkers include Charles Taylor, Michael Sandel, Michael Walzer, and Alasdair MacIntyre. Communitarianism has both proponents and critics, and discussions around its ideas often revolve around striking the right balance between individual rights and collective well-being. Dear students, let us now look at the ideas propounded by some of the modern-day communitarian thinkers and the criticisms they face. Michael Sandel. Michael Sandel's criticism of liberalism, particularly his emphasis on the importance of community and his concerns about individualism, have sparked significant debates within political philosophy. Many of Sandel's works have focused on a critique of liberalism. The book that first got Sandal's name on the map of modern philosophy was Liberalism and the Limits of Justice, published in 1982. This book was a critique of John Rawls' A Theory of Justice. His work was crucial in starting and continuing the liberal communitarian debate through the 1980s. As such, most of the criticisms against Sandal's works have come in the form of the liberal defense against communitarian criticisms. Liberal defenders have offered several responses to Sandal's criticism. The first defense is regarding balancing individualism and community. Liberal defenders acknowledge the value of community and shared values. Still, they argue that individual rights and freedoms are essential for protecting minority interests and preventing the tyranny of the majority. Liberals argue that individual rights protect individuals from societal pressures and potential oppression, allowing them to pursue their own conception of the good life. They contend that without these protections, minority individuals or groups might be coerced into conforming to the values of the majority community. They emphasize that a well-functioning liberal society can accommodate both individual rights and a strong sense of community. Another defense comes from the role of public reason in liberal politics. Liberal thinkers like Rawls proposed the concept of public reason, which suggests that political decisions and policies should be based on reasons that can be accepted by all reasonable individuals, regardless of their comprehensive moral doctrines. This approach allows for a common ground to be established within a diverse society. Liberals emphasize procedural justice, which focuses on fair decision-making processes rather than predefining particular outcomes. They argue that procedural justice ensures that individuals have a voice in shaping the rules and policies that affect their lives. Liberal defenders also contend that civic education can foster a sense of community and shared values without compromising individual rights. By educating citizens about their responsibilities and encouraging civic engagement, liberalism can promote a robust civil society. Liberals emphasize the importance of open public debate and discourse, where individuals can engage in rational discussions to address conflicting values and find common ground. Some liberal theorists, such as Will Kymlicka, have proposed a form of inclusive pluralism that aims to accommodate cultural and communal diversity within a liberal framework. This allows individuals to maintain their cultural identities while adhering to a common universal set of liberal principles. Lastly, some liberal thinkers like Martha Nussbaum argue that liberal principles can actually enhance human flourishing by providing individuals with the freedom to pursue their own conception of a meaningful life. Liberalism can be adapted to address some of Sandal's concerns. In essence, liberal defenders seek to demonstrate that liberalism is not incompatible with community values and that it offers a framework that can accommodate diverse beliefs and identities while protecting individual rights and freedoms. The liberal response to Sandal's criticism has been considered by liberal theorists a rebuttal of the communitarian attack on liberalism. However, the debate between Sandal's communitarian critiques and liberal responses continues to shape discussions on the individual and the community's role in contemporary modern societies. These discussions have only shown the indispensability of Sandal's works, thereby making Sandal's works even more significant in modern political philosophy. Michael Walzer. The formation of the concept of complex equality is one of Michael Walzer's most fascinating contributions to contemporary political theory. Walzer's work attempts to understand society so we can all accept different conceptions of goods. In this way, he comes closest to the idea of value pluralism, which is the cornerstone of his approach. However, his idea of complex equality has been subject to various criticisms. Here are some common criticisms that have been directed at the concept of complex equality. The first criticism comes from critics who fear subjectivity in determining goods. They argue that determining which goods should be distributed according to which principles can be highly subjective and open to interpretation. This subjectivity can lead to inconsistencies and difficulties in the practical application of the concept. The concept of complex equality does not provide clear criteria regarding how to weigh and balance different goods against each other. This non-clarity can lead to challenges when resolving conflicts between different distribution principles. Critics contend that complex equality might result in inequitable outcomes. The inequitable outcomes could perpetuate existing inequalities in society. The complexity of determining distribution principles for various goods can make the decision-making process less transparent and difficult to understand for the public. This lack of transparency might hinder accountability and public engagement. Another set of criticisms argues that complex equality tends to focus on the distribution of individual goods without necessarily addressing underlying systemic injustices that might lead to unequal distributions in the first place. Critics argue that complex equality can inadvertently perpetuate the existing distribution of goods, as it relies on established distribution principles for each good. This tendency might hinder efforts to challenge and change unjust distributions. The principles for distributing different goods are often based on existing social norms and values, which might not necessarily reflect a just distribution. Such principles could reinforce prevailing prejudices and biases. The flexibility in assigning distribution principles to different goods might be exploited to justify unequal distributions or serve powerful groups' interests. Some other critics speak from the perspective of universalism. According to them, the concept of complex equality might not be easily transferable to different cultural, social, and economic contexts, limiting its universal applicability. Complex equality lacks universal standards for determining which goods are essential and how they should be distributed. The absence of universal standards can result in a lack of consistency in different societies and contexts. Balancing and weighing the importance of various goods can be challenging, and critics suggest that the approach does not provide clear guidance on how to prioritize one good over another in cases of conflict. Due to the lack of universal principles, there is always a chance of falling prey to cultural relativism. Walzer adopted a clearly relativistic position in his book Spheres of Justice, in which he asserted that the caste system is good by the standards of traditional Indian society. Critics argued, however, that his position was indefensible. One simply needs to consider a community that champions honor killings, lynchings, or book burnings to realize that communities should not be the ultimate negotiators of that which is good. It is essential to consider these criticisms within the broader context of debates on distributive justice. While complex equality attempts to provide a nuanced approach to distribution, critics highlight challenges related to its practical implementation, potential for inequitable outcomes, and its ability to address underlying structural injustices. However, this does not deny the significance of the concept of complex equality, particularly in modern discourses on distributive justice. Charles Taylor. One of the most influential philosophers in the English-speaking world, Charles Taylor is internationally renowned for his contributions to political and moral theory, particularly to debates about identity formation, multiculturalism, secularism, and modernity. Much of Taylor's work focuses on the politics of recognition and multiculturalism. The politics of recognition focuses on acknowledging and respecting the identities and cultures of marginalized groups. While this approach has its merits, it has also faced severe criticisms. The first set of criticisms addresses the potential for essentialism. Critics argue that the politics of recognition can sometimes lead to essentialism, reducing individuals to fixed, predefined identities based on their group membership. The politics of recognition can sometimes reduce complex identities to a single aspect, such as ethnicity or gender, neglecting other essential dimensions of an individual's identity. This overemphasis on one identity can oversimplify the diversity and complexity of individual experiences within a particular group, leading to group homogenization. Treating groups as homogeneous entities can overlook internal diversity and differences of opinions within those groups. This approach might inadvertently silence dissenting voices within marginalized communities. Another criticism comes from reservations against identity politics. Critics contend that focusing solely on recognition and identity can distract from addressing material inequalities and structural injustices. Identity-related discussions might overshadow economic disparities and unequal access to resources. Critics argue that the politics of recognition places undue emphasis on identity and can overshadow shared values and common humanity. This might hinder efforts to build inclusive and cohesive societies. Critics argue that political actors might instrumentalize identity for their own purposes, using the language of recognition to advance their agendas or consolidate their power. Identity is not static, it evolves over time. Critics suggest that the politics of recognition might struggle to keep pace with the changing nature of identities and the emergence of new social categories. Different marginalized groups may have conflicting demands for recognition in diverse societies, leading to challenges in determining whose claims should take precedence. There is a concern that the politics of recognition can lead to a zero-sum view of social justice, where recognition for one group is seen as a loss for another. This can exacerbate tensions and hinder collaborative efforts. Critics question the extent to which the state can effectively and fairly navigate the complexities of recognition without accidentally privileging certain groups over others. Lastly, there is the criticism of cultural relativism. Emphasizing the importance of recognizing cultural differences can sometimes lead to cultural relativism, where harmful practices are tolerated in the name of respecting cultural traditions. It is important to note that these criticisms do not negate the importance of recognizing and respecting marginalized identities. Instead, they highlight potential challenges and limitations of the politics of recognition as the only approach to addressing social justice issues. Critics often emphasize the need for a more comprehensive approach that considers both identity-based recognition and broader structural changes. Despite all criticisms, Taylor's works remain a guiding force in contemporary debates on multiculturalism, democracy, recognition, and identity in modern societies. Taylor has been crucial in providing a detailed communitarian and multicultural imagination of our societies. Dear students, now that we have discussed individual thinkers, let us assess some broader criticisms against the communitarian philosophy. Communitarian philosophy, while advocating for the importance of community and shared values, has faced several criticisms from various perspectives. Critics argue that communitarianism can undervalue individual autonomy and rights in favor of collective interests. This can potentially lead to the suppression of dissenting opinions and the stifling of personal creativity and innovation. There is a concern that a strong emphasis on community values can lead to cultural tyranny, where minority individuals or groups are coerced into conforming to the dominant cultural norms and values of the community. Critics point out that achieving consensus on community values and norms can be challenging, particularly in diverse societies. The lack of consensus can lead to conflicts over whose values should take precedence and what constitutes the common good. Critics argue that communitarian theories often assume homogeneity and shared values within communities that might not exist in reality. This assumption can lead to idealized notions of community that do not reflect the complexities of diverse societies. critics argue that communitarianism might be too rigid in the face of social change. Communities evolve over time, and an inflexible adherence to traditional values might hinder progress and adaptation to new circumstances. Communitarian focus on prioritizing insiders can lead to injustices against outsiders or those not belonging to a particular community. This can perpetuate discrimination and exclusion. In some cases, a strong emphasis on community can suppress individual rights and freedoms, particularly in societies where community norms are highly restrictive. While communitarianism seeks to balance individual rights with social responsibilities, critics contend that the philosophy might emphasize the latter, potentially leading to a neglect of individual rights. Some critics suggest that communitarianism can downplay the role of reason and rational discourse in ethical and political decision making, relying more on tradition and emotion. Critics argue that strong communal pressures can stifle individual dissent and creativity, leading to a conformist society that discourages critical thinking. It is important to remember that communitarian philosophy is not a monolithic ideology, and there are different variations of communitarian thought. Critics of communitarianism often emphasize the potential pitfalls and challenges of its principles. At the same time, proponents argue that it provides a necessary counterbalance to hyper-individualistic ideologies and offers a foundation for promoting social cohesion and solidarity. Dear students, let us now look at the significance of communitarian philosophy. Communitarian philosophy holds significance in several ways, providing a unique perspective on social, political, and ethical issues. Here are some of the major aspects that highlight the importance of communitarian philosophy. Balance between individual and community. Communitarianism critiques excessive individualism and highlights the importance of balancing individual rights and autonomy with the needs and well-being of the community. This perspective encourages a more holistic understanding of human relationships and societal harmony. Communitarianism addresses the potential downsides of hyper-individualistic societies, where individual interests may overshadow collective well-being. By critiquing this imbalance, communitarian philosophy prompts discussions about individuals' responsibilities towards their communities. Communitarianism encourages conversations about how individual rights should be balanced with social responsibilities. This can lead to considerations about the duties individuals have towards others and their own communities. Cultural pluralism. Communitarian thought recognizes the significance of cultural traditions, norms, and values in shaping individuals and communities. This is especially important in diverse societies where cultural understanding and tolerance are essential for peaceful coexistence. Communitarian thinkers challenge the idea that abstract rationality alone can adequately address complex moral and political issues. They highlight the role of context, traditions, and shared values in shaping ethical and political decisions. Political participation. Communitarian thought encourages active civic engagement and emphasizes citizens' role in shaping their community's policies and values. This can contribute to a more participatory and democratic society. Communitarian thought strongly emphasizes the pursuit of the common good over narrow self-interest. This emphasis can influence political discourse and policy making by encouraging a focus on societal well-being. Communitarian philosophy bridges the gap between ethical considerations and political decisions. It highlights the interconnectedness of personal values, community norms, and broader political structures. Influence on policy and governance. Communitarian ideas can influence policy discussions related to social welfare, education, healthcare, and other areas by advocating for policies that prioritize social cohesion and the needs of marginalized communities. Communitarianism emphasizes the importance of caring relationships and responsibilities within communities. This perspective can influence ethical discussions by highlighting the value of empathy, compassion, and support for others. Communitarianism encourages a consideration of the long-term effects of actions on the well-being of communities, which can lead to more sustainable and responsible decision making. Overall, the significance of communitarian philosophy lies in its capacity to challenge prevailing individualistic ideologies, encourage a more holistic understanding of society, and foster discussions about the values, responsibilities, and relationships that contribute to the well-being of individuals and communities. Dear students, let us now conclude this lecture. The modern communitarian literature has fueled the liberal communitarian debate, which is still raging like a fire. The fact that an established hegemonic tradition like liberalism had to present a defense against the communitarian criticisms speaks volumes about the arguments communitarianism has made against liberalism and individualism. Besides, communitarianism has also played a critical role in providing philosophical basis and inspiration to theories of multiculturalism, identity politics, and intersectionality, among others. So, the conclusion is, yes, community is valuable, at least as valuable as the need for freedom, if not more. However, which form of community to emphasize and which form to de-emphasize depends upon the needs and problems of particular societies. In short, the political implications of communitarianism depend upon the cultural outlooks and social priorities of specific contexts. It would not be wrong to say that communitarian ideas have a long history and an even longer future. So, dear students, I hope you enjoyed this lecture. See you soon with another lecture on modern political philosophy. Thank you.